The tent was quiet. Snowflakes danced lightly outside, but inside, the air felt heavier than steel. Robb Stark stood at the center of the war table, hands braced against the edge, staring down at the map. Pins marked battles won and cities burned, but not the prize, not King's Landing. Catelyn Stark spoke gently. "You can't abandon the Riverlands. Your grandfather's home is under siege. Your bannermen will follow me, Robb." Cut her off, his voice steady but burning. "They want vengeance, not politics." Every rider from the north saw father die screaming, his head on a spike. And now they want to chase Lannisters around the Riverlands while Joffrey wears his crown. A silence stretched out. Catelyn's lips parted, but she saw it in his eyes. He wasn't a boy anymore. The council murmured, some objecting, others watching their young king with wary respect. It was Great John Umber who finally stood and clapped, a hand on the table. "Let's take the damned throne. We march south, fast, hard. The lion's cub won't know what hit him." And so it was decided. Robb Stark would not linger in the Riverlands. He would not bleed his men out saving castles. That couldn't help him. He would ride straight for the heart of the Seven Kingdoms, plunge his claws into the chest of the lion. The first weeks were brutal. The army had to move faster than any northern force had ever marched. They passed through villages that had never seen a northern lord, let alone an army of thousands. But Robb didn't waste time. He gave strict orders: no looting, no burning, no rape. They weren't conquerors, they were executioners. When they reached the twins, Walder Frey sneered through missing teeth and watery eyes. "You want my bridge? What do I get?" "I got girls, lots. OFM, and not one good match in this rotten realm." Robb didn't argue. He offered marriage. Not for himself, he offered Edmure, his uncle, and he swore protection. Walder grumbled, but the chance to tie his blood to a rising king was too tempting. The gates opened. By the time they reached Harrenhal, the ruined castle stood empty. Gregor Clegane had fled ahead of them, likely ordered back by Tywin. No traps, no battle, only ashes and bones. "We keep going," Robb ordered. He didn't allow feasts. He didn't allow rest longer than a night. Men whispered that Robb Stark had wolf blood in him that he didn't eat, didn't sleep. They saw Grey Wind at his side, eyes glowing, snarling at anyone who grew lazy. They were 10 leagues from King's Landing when the first scouts returned. "The city is weak," one said. "No armies inside. Just gold cloaks and Lannister guards." "And the people?" Robb asked. "Hungry, angry, and scared." Catelyn urged caution. "A siege could cost you months, Robb. Tywin is behind us. Stannis is watching. If you trap yourself here, I'm not zeeking," Robb said. "I'm breaking the gates." He called a war council. "We strike tomorrow, at dawn, a full assault. I want the city taken before Tywin can reach us, before Stannis dares move." But the gates Roose Bolton started are made of wood and fear, Robb said coldly. "Joffrey is no Targaryen. He has no dragons, just gold and cowards." It was mad. Everyone knew it. A full assault on King's Landing, without siege towers, without catapults, without the fleet Renly or Stannis had used. But Robb wasn't trying to starve the city. He was trying to cut out its heart before it could scream for help. That night, he walked the camps. His men bowed to him, some with awe, others with quiet dread. They were ready, but they knew the risk. Grey Wind walked beside him, growling at the shadows. "You think I'm wrong, boy," Robb whispered. That I'm risking everything. Grey Wind didn't answer, but he didn't look away either. When Robb returned to his tent, he found Catelyn waiting. Your father would have tried to save lives, she said. Robb looked at her, tired beyond years. Father tried to do the right thing. He died with honor and left us a kingdom burning. He kissed her hand gently. Tomorrow we end it. Outside, the city lights of King's Landing twinkled. The Red Keep stood tall, smug and untouched, its spires stretching arrogantly into the night. But the wolf was coming, and he was hungry. The first horns blew at dawn. The cold grey light of early morning rolled across the hills surrounding King's Landing as the Northmen began to move. Thousands of feet thundered across the frozen ground, shields clanged, horses snorted. The air was thick with breath, sweat, and fear. Robb Stark rode at the front, sword drawn, grey wind bounding ahead like a ghost of war. They didn't wait. No negotiations. No heralds or banners of peace. Robb wanted the gates shattered before the sun rose fully. He knew what delay brought Tywin, reinforcements, betrayal. The city walls loomed. Not as high as Winterfell's, but deadly all the same. Gold cloaks lined the battlements, their yellow cloaks flapping uselessly in the wind. Archers readied. Fear was thick in their eyes. They weren't trained soldiers. They were hired loyalty. Archers shouted, "Great John Umber." The northern longbows bent in one synchronized motion, and the first volley darkened the sky. Arrows rained down like death itself. Some hit stone, some found flesh. Screams echoed from the wall. Then came the rams. A massive wooden battering ram, thick iron-tipped, and pushed by 50 grunting soldiers, slammed into the gates again and again. The thunderous boom of wood against wood echoed like drums of doom. Inside, the gold cloaks panicked. Some fired, arrows half-heartedly. Some turned and ran. A few tried to hold the gate with spears. They didn't last. With a final splintering crack, the gates of King's Landing burst open and the wolf poured in. Robb was among the first to ride through. His blade glinted, cutting down one gold cloak who had drawn too slowly. Grey wind tore through another, a flash of silver and blood. The streets were chaos. Bells rang, people screamed, doors slammed. It wasn't a siege, it was a reckoning. Cersei Lannister stood in the Red Keep, still in her nightdress, watching. The flames from the Tower of the Hand. Her son Joffrey was on his knees beside her, trembling. "There inside the city," said Maester Pycelle, his voice shaking. Cersei poured herself wine, fingers steady. "Get Seer Mandan and Seer Borrows, anyone who hasn't fled." Pycelle hesitated. "They're gone, my queen." A beat of silence. Then Cersei downed the entire goblet and threw it across the chamber. It shattered on the marble. "You cowardly bastards," she spat. "All of you." She turned to Joffrey, grabbing his chin. "You caused this. You and your smug little games. You executed Ned Stark, and now his son is here to gut you. Do you understand?" Joffrey whimpered. "Mother, please, ... But it was too late. The Red Keep trembled underfoot. Back in the city, Robb's army pushed through like a flood. They met resistance from Lannister soldiers near the Sept of Baelor, but not enough. The civilians cowered in homes, some crying, some praying, others begging the Northmen not to burn their houses. Robb's orders were clear: no looting, no rape, no killing innocents. Break those rules, and you hang. Roose Bolton walked through the bloodied streets in silence, his eyes cold and calculating. He didn't speak much, but he was watching, always watching. Near the market square, the final stand of the city watch collapsed. One captain raised his sword and shouted for the crown. He was cut down before he finished his sentence. By midday, the wolf banners flew over the great sept. By afternoon, they were nailed to the Red Keep's outer wall. Cersei had one last card to play. She stood in the throne room with Joffrey behind her, a dagger tucked in her robes. If they came for them, she would not let the Stark boy parade her like a prize. She would kill her son herself before letting him fall into Robb's hands. But the doors opened and, instead of soldiers, it was Sansa, dressed in rags. Her hair cut short, face pale from months of trauma. She stepped into the chamber like a ghost of vengeance. Cersei blinked. "What is this?" she hissed. Didn't answer. She simply turned, nodded, and Robb Stark walked in behind her, flanked by bannermen. The throne room fell silent. Cersei stepped in front of Joffrey. "I'll kill him." Robb raised a hand. "You won't. You don't." "Know me, I do," he said quietly. "You love him, even though he's a monster." Cersei's hand trembled. Her fingers brushed the dagger. Then she dropped it. Joffrey ran, like a rat. He tried to flee behind the throne, but grey wind leaped and tackled him to the floor. Robb didn't speak. He simply walked up, pulled Joffrey up by the collar, and looked him dead in the eye. "You killed my father. You destroyed my house. You started a war," Joffrey whimpered. "I'm the king." "No," Robb said coldly. "Not anymore." He turned to his men. "Put him in the black cells. I'll deal with him tomorrow." Cersei dropped to her knees, silent. Her kingdom, her power, her dynasty gone in a day. The Iron Throne stood cold and ugly, empty once more. Robb didn't look at it. He looked at Sansa. "We're going to fix what they broke," he said softly. The smell of blood still clung to the stones of the Red Keep. Robb Stark stood at the high balcony of Maegor's Holdfast, overlooking the capital he had taken in one violent sweep. The banners of House Stark now flapped across the rooftops. The lion had fallen, but what remained in its place was a beast of a different kind, something colder, uncertain. He had taken King's Landing, yes, but now came the part he hated more than any battle politics. Roose Bolton entered quietly behind him. "The streets are comfort now. The people are too stunned to rebel, too tired to resist. They'll resent us before the week is out," Robb muttered. "They already do," Roose said with a thin smile. "They see you as a northern conqueror, not a liberator." Robb didn't answer. He'd seen it in their eyes, fear, yes, but not just. Fear of the Lannister. The people of King's Landing feared all rulers. The banners changed. The boots changed. The pain stayed. In the throne room, the lords who hadn't fled were gathered. Small folk leaders, nobles of minor houses, a few frightened Tyrell retainers. Sansa stood near Robb, still quiet, still hollow, but her presence seemed to draw strength from the walls themselves. She knew this court. She had survived its lies. Robb addressed them plainly. "There will be no king today." Murmurs broke. "Out. I came to take justice, not a crown. I am king in the north. I will not rule a kingdom that murdered my father and spat on his honor." More murmurs. Some nodded in approval. Others looked confused. Seer Davos Seaworth, who had just arrived representing Stannis Baratheon, raised an eyebrow. "You took the city, boy," he said. "You hold the throne, and now you want to give it up." "I want peace," Robb said. "But not peace on my knees." He turned to Sansa. I want her to rule the South, with a council, with laws that aren't written by knives and wine. The chamber exploded with voices. She's a girl. She's a Stark. She's a Lannister's wife. She's a hostage. Robb's voice cut through it all. She's the last person in this city who deserves justice, and the only one who knows how you people think. And if you don't want her, I'll burn this city to ash and let the rats rebuild it. That shut them up. That night, Robb visited the dungeons. Joffrey Baratheon sat alone in the dark, filthy and trembling, his fine clothes ripped and smeared with his own waste. No crown, no guards, no mother, just stone and silence. Robb opened the door slowly. Joffrey lunged. Robb didn't flinch. The chains snapped Joffrey's body back like a dog on a leash. He collapsed to the floor, gasping. You're not a king, Robb said calmly. You're a rabid animal who thinks gold makes him a god. I'll have your head, Joffrey screamed. Robb knelt. You had my father's. Joffrey spat. At him, missed. Robb looked down at the broken boy with something like pity. Then he rose and left, saying only, You'll live long enough to feel everything you gave others. The door slammed shut. Cersei's fate came quickly. 3 days. After the city's fall, she was found trying to flee in a scepter's robes. Sansa was the one who stopped her. They stood face to face in the gardens of the Red Keep. Do you think I've forgotten? Sansa asked quietly. Cersei tried to smile. I was only protecting my children. Sansa stepped forward. You laughed while they beat me. You whispered lies into Joffrey's ears. You told me I'd learn my place. And you have, Cersei said, voice tightening. Your place is on your knees, just like your father when he begged for mercy. That was the last straw. Sansa didn't order her death. She didn't need to. It was Sir Brynden Tully Blackfish, who stepped forward and struck Cersei down with one clean blow of his sword. She was never going to see justice, he said. Only more lies. Robb did not argue, but the war was not over. Reports began to pour in. Tywin Lannister was regrouping at Harrenhal. Renly Baratheon had declared himself king in Highgarden with the support of the Tyrells. And most dangerously Stannis had set sail from Dragonstone with fire in his wake and the Red Woman at his side. The Game of Thrones hadn't ended. Robb had only lit a new match. And across the sea, in the red wastes, a girl with silver hair dreamed of fire and blood. The banners of House Stark still hung across King's Landing, but they no longer flapped proudly. They drooped under damp skies and a city groaning beneath tension. The people whispered. Food was scarce. Merchants feared taxes from new masters. The court was uneasy, the nobles restless. Robb sat in a cold chamber that had once been Tywin Lannister's war room. The air still smelled faintly of him of ink, arrogance, and old blood. Roose Bolton stood nearby, arms crossed. We hold the capital, but not the realm. Robb nodded. 3 kings ride for it. Renly plays king in gardens, Bolton said dismissively. He's soft, soft with 40,000 men, Robb replied. And the Tyrells, that makes him dangerous. And Stannis, Roose asked. Hard, Robb said. Hard like stone and just as stubborn. He won't stop. The door creaked open. Catelyn entered, her face pale. They're here, she said. Both of them, Robb blinked. Who, Stannis and Tywin? Stannis, Baratheon, didn't wait for pleasantries. He arrived at the gates of King's Landing with his banners high and his voice cold. You sit in the seat of traitors, he told Robb before even dismounting. The Iron Throne belongs to me, by law, by blood. Robb met him outside the city walls, flanked by Great John Umber and Seer Brynden Tully. You're right, Robb said simply. But I don't want the throne. You can have it if you agree to leave the North to the Northmen. Stannis studied him. So you're not a king. You're a warlord with manners. I am a son who buried his father's honor in this city. I have no taste for your throne. Stannis almost looked satisfied. You've made a wise choice. But there's a condition, Robb said. Stannis frowned. Joffrey lives, Robb said. He stands trial. Not a burning, not a Bacali knife. A real trial. Before lords, before people. Stannis stared for a long moment. You'd spare the boy who murdered your father? I'd rather see justice done than vengeance half finished. Behind Stannis, the red woman Melisandre watched silently, her red eyes gleaming. She whispered something into the king's ear. He waved her off. You'll have your trial, he said at last. But that fragile alliance was broken before sundown. As the city prepared for Stannis' entrance, word arrived like a plague wind. Tywin Lannister had reached the outer fields. He was marching fast. With him were the remnants of the Lannister host and a new force, bannermen from the Westerlands, and mercenaries from Essos, led by Seer Gregor Clegane. He hadn't come for treaties, he'd come for revenge. The Northmen rushed to reinforce the city's defenses. Stannis was trapped too deep inside, not enough time to retreat. Robb met with him atop the walls. You brought the lion to our doorstep, Stannis growled. You brought fire and prophecy, Robb snapped. Let's see who burns first. The next morning, war came again. Tywin didn't hesitate. His soldiers slammed into the outer walls like a hammer. The city burned against catapults launching flaming debris, crossbowmen peppering the battlements. Inside, Robb commanded the defense like a wolf on fire. He didn't sleep, he didn't sit. Grey wind moved with him, silent and savage. Led his troops at the southern gate, where Lannister infantry poured like red ants. At one point, Robb and Stannis stood back to back on the walls, swords flashing as arrows rained around them. But even together, they were losing. They're too many, Great John bellowed. We'll bleed out by dusk. Roose Bolton suggested a retreat to the keep, but Robb saw something else in opening. Tywin had left his rear lightly guarded, too eager to take the city before nightfall. We strike now, Robb said. Out the eastern gate. 10,000 riders. Hit his supply line. Starve him while he fights. It's suicide, Bolton said coldly. No, Robb replied. It's vengeance. He turned to Stannis. Can you hold the wall? Stannis gave a single nod. I was born for walls and fire. That night, under cover of smoke and chaos, Robb led 1,000 northern riders out the eastern gate. They circled wide under moonlight, silent and quick. By dawn, Tywin's supply, line food, siege weapons, and tents were in flames. Panic erupted in the Lannister camp. Horses bolted. Soldiers scattered. Robb's riders melted into the hills. Inside the city, Stannis led a brutal counterattack with the remaining city guard. They took back the gates, driving the Lannisters into disarray. And for the second time in 2 weeks, King's Landing belonged to the Wolfhand, now the Stag. 2. Tywin Lannister was never captured. He fled with the remnants of his army toward Casterly Rock, broken and bleeding. The mountain vanished into the riverlands, leaving only corpses and smoke behind him. But the city Robb had taken was no longer the same. It belonged to shadows, to fire, to something ancient and stirring. And deep in the dungeons, Joffrey Baratheon laughed in the dark, whispering nonsense to the rats. The smoke from Tywin's retreat still lingered over the city. Even the wind refused to carry it away. King's Landing was won again, but this victory did not feel like triumph. It felt like a funeral. Robb stood on the balcony of the tower of the Hand, watching men rebuild broken gates, douse smoldering fires, and carry away the dead. Grey wind lay beside him, silent. Even the direwolf seemed weary. A raven perched nearby, black as midnight, silent as guilt. Stannis entered the chamber. Without knocking, he wore no crown, just a simple black cloak. "You fought like a king," Stannis said. "I'm not one," Robb replied. "Maybe not," Stannis murmured. "But you act like one. That makes you dangerous." Robb turned, eyes hard. "So what? Now, will your red woman burn me like she burns leeches?" "She wants to," Stannis said honestly. "She says the old gods are rising, that your wolf is a sign of something foul in the north." Robb didn't flinch. "Tell her to keep her." Flames to herself. "The gods of the north don't kneel." A long silence. Then Stannis said, "I'll take the throne." "As agreed. You take the north. We'll sign peace. But if your banners march south again, I will not show mercy a second time." "Fair," Robb said. "But you should worry more about the girl across the sea. She's coming." Stannis's lips tightened. "Let her." Days later, a trial was held. The Great Sept was repaired just enough to host it. Joffrey Baratheon was dragged in chains before lords and ladies. His blonde curls were gone, head shaved, face bruised. He looked more like a sickly orphan than the boy who had ordered Ned Stark's death. Sansa Stark sat at the head of the tribunal. Robb refused the seat. "I want no crown," he had said. "Let her pass judgment." Joffrey screamed when he saw her. He begged, raged, wept, claimed he was a child. Claimed Cersei acted alone. Sansa never blinked. "You called me your queen once," she said coldly. "Now I call you what you truly are, a coward, a murderer, and a legacy of rot." The crowd roared with approval. When the sentence came, it was not execution, it was exile. Joffrey Baratheon was stripped of his name, his titles, his family. He would live banished to the wall, a nameless man in the black, watched forever by those who had seen the ruin he left behind. Some wanted blood, Sansa wanted silence. "Let him live," she said. "Let him rot." Robb prepared to leave. He walked the halls of the Red Keep one last time, staring at walls built by dragons and held by monsters. Stannis would rule now. He had already begun reshaping the city in his image, hard, cold, fair. Sansa stood in the courtyard to see him off. "You could have ruled," she said quietly. Robb shook his head. "I'm not made for thrones." "Neither was I," she replied. "But I've learned." He smiled, proud and sad. "If you ever need the north," he said, "send word." The wolf remembers. They embraced for the first time in years, and the last, perhaps, in peace. The road north was long and bitter. Robb passed burned villages, ruined keeps, corpses swinging from trees. The realm was broken, not by his war, but by years of lies. The Lannisters had left poison in every corner. It would take more than banners to clean it out. When he reached Riverrun, he found the Riverlands in disarray. The Freys had grown bold again. Lord Walder demanded the marriage Robb had promised before the march. Robb refused. "I will not marry into treachery," he said. Walder Frey cursed him and shut the gates. The Red Wedding never happened, but war with the Freys was coming. That would be a different kind of blood. Back at Winterfell, the snows had begun. Bran waited in silence beneath the weirwood. His visions had grown darker. He spoke in riddles, of dragons flying over frozen lands, of a girl with silver hair, of a dead man in black armor with blue eyes like moonlight. The real war hasn't started. Bran whispered when Robb returned. I just ended one. No, Bran said. You lit the fire. Now the darkness is coming to find it. Robb turned, his gaze to the sky. A raven circled overhead, no message tied to its leg. Just watching, waiting. Far to the east, across the sea, Daenerys Targaryen stepped from the ashes of Astapor. Her dragon screamed into the sky. She had heard of kings, landings fall, of the boy wolf who took it and gave it away. She smiled. Let's see if he gives it again, she whispered.